Welcome to the Mana Mama podcast. Welcome to a mother's love. How are you today, Billa?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question, and I don't really have an answer. Something like sailing across big swell in a big open sea, and feeling steady as the captain, but having no clue where this boat's going right now.
Pioneering.
Something like that.
Constantly pioneering you are.
Yep.
God, I just, in opening up this chat, I just want everyone here to try, I'm going to try my hardest to transmit who you are to me, to me, you, I don't know anyone, Billa, who has a fucking sharper vision and clearer sense of, now this is the hard part, how do I put this stuff into words? I thought a little bit about it beforehand. I feel it's like the psycho-spiritual terrain or fabric of our experience as humans on Earth. I feel like you have got your finger so on the pulse of that. And that is, ecocentricity in its finest, because it's not just putting nature, first and foremost and in the center of the circle, but it's so multi-layered and multi-dimensional what you are aware of in everywhere and everywhere you walk, and everything you do, you are aware of all of the fields of influence, and you're navigating and bridging all of that. It's really quite remarkable what you do, my sister. I hope you know that you blow my mind. And there will never be any words that can, encompass you and your purpose and your heart, darling, and your vision. And you're just so full of knowledge as well. You blow me away. And I know you've probably shared only, 0.5% of your knowledge and wisdom with me. And even what you have shared, I just, I'm floored always. And I'm so excited to bring some of that to the listeners and to the people, because you are a guide, honey. You are a guide of the new earth, without a doubt. Like you said, a captain. And a captain in its integrity, knows exactly where we're going, but doesn't necessarily know how. Is letting nature... The navigating, exactly. Yeah. And so, I think, the realms that you work in, a lot of people aren't aware of even, and that's okay, because we've all got different roles here. But I know how inspiring it is to hear about how you see things and what you see and what you're aware of. And so I just actually wanted to start by taking a few words of your own that you sent to me earlier this morning, and I'm just going to read it back to you. And then I'm going to ask you to share with us from your heart about what it means. You said, "I've devoted my life to understanding the dismantling of human biocultural wisdom." Tell us.
Okay. Well, thank you for your amazing words and sharing. I really am so grateful for our journey, which is nearly a decade long now.
Right on.
And having you as my ally and someone to share, and someone, who sees me and understands, it's very comforting. It can be a lonely road. So I just want to say thank you, and thanks for having me on here. Hearing you speak back to me, trying to describe my walk, it's like the first thing that comes to mind is just, walking in a cosmology the way traditional Indigenous folks all around the planet did, that we are two-leggeds on the earth in a vast universe, navigating nature all the time, from the micro right through to the macro. And, that's how I see and feel and experience the world, I suppose. So yeah, it is multi-layered, and always coming back to the experience that we're having right in the moment as a two-legged. And these are very interesting times that we're living in and doing that. Right. Always just, I think from when I was really, really little, like 2 is my earliest memory of going, what is this shit show that I've been born into? I for some reason, I had my christening very late with my brother, so I had a conscious memory of it, and that was like my first memory of going, what is this? And having a felt sense of, this a lie comes to mind, that this is a lie. There's a lot of untruth and falsity going on, and so right from when I was little, I was just seeking to understand, and so my 40-something years later, I can say, well, what I've been doing is understanding what has dismantled that biocultural wisdom of earth peoples. Why was I experiencing that? Why do I experience my life the way I do? And what is this trajectory that we're on? How can I show up in this time that we're living in? And what has transpired? And for me, that comes right to my skin and bones. Like I'm a European descendant on the face of it. And what's my story? Like that process of disconnection that's been there for many, many, many centuries leaves us, especially, European descendants in any of the New World countries, Australia, South Africa, United States, massive migration of our ancestors up to 6-7 generations back. Do we even ask what our history is? Do we even question, how do we get here? Why did my ancestors get on a boat and come all the way to Australia? What was going on back there? We don't get taught that at school. We get taught the noble settler story. And American children get taught the same, and the frontier and all of this nobility about the pioneering spirit, so it's ironic that, I often get called a pioneer and yet that lie of pioneering, is the very thing that disconnects us from our own ancestors and our own story. And so people often, they're not even looking into our own family history and our own ancestral story, and looking right back for our deep, deep Indigenous connection to the earth and an origin place. And so, I feel like my mindset is very Indigenous to the earth. Like I see the world from an Indigenous view, but I understand the West because I've been raised in it. And so I'm there, that's where I'm navigating the two all the time, and wanting to help, European descendant people to reclaim themselves instead of appropriating the remnants of all the, Indigenous cultures around us or not around us, which is so rife in the spiritual movement. And so, it's just been good to ask the questions in coming on here to go, well, what is it? Because it's just something I walk, I don't really have a name for any of this stuff other than just reclaiming myself and my lineage and my who I am and why I'm here, in a real sense.
And tell us, what for your heart, for the huge picture you have for the planet, what does it mean for one of us to reclaim that? What do you think the repercussions of that are?
It's so powerful, because the true power of the human spirit tracks back across time. It's not linear at all. Like we can actually tap into our own earth power across the ages, right back to our own origins and our own homelands. Because it's in our bones. We are made of that stuff. We are representing our ancestors, even if, I'm living here in Australia today. So when we tap back in, there is actual power there. There is wisdom, there is guidance, there is relationship, there is, you know, and probably most important for these times, there is overcoming all the spells and lies and illusions that actually keep you from that power. That's the key thing, is it's your family, it's your lineage, it's your root back to the earth.
Oh my God, so deeply moved by what you just said. The overcoming, I just like the two words that are just so like really energetically screaming at me in a good way from what you've shared, are the overcoming and the lies. Like, do you know, like we can, I'm with you. We can so swiftly bypass all the fucking lies that have been placed upon us by connecting in deeply like you do, like you've learnt to taught yourself to do or remembered how to do and are teaching others how to do, you know, to really empower ourselves and take back, you know, guardianship, custodianship, so many things of our planet. I love how you just mentioned then, you talked about, I think you even said gifts, or something. Gifts can even come and be bestowed upon us from our ancestors or from our original lands or what have you. And I know that about you, that you are a weather wizard. You are a definitely very powerful woman in moving, we call in the Andes, pushing or driving the calcite, moving, living energy. And that, wouldn't you say, like I feel that about you, that comes straight from your ancestors, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, tell us.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, when you're completely disconnected from any lineage and no one in your family says, hey, this is who we are, we came here on a boat in 1876, blah 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 blah, we've been living in Gumbaynggirr country for 6 generations, nobody told me any of that. You know, I just had a sense, and I think the very first profound thing that someone I would call a teacher when I was very, very young said, learn your tongue. And I was like, he means learn my language. And I'm like, how's that going to happen? You know, like nobody in my family speaks our language. My ancestors are Norwegian, Swiss, Welsh, you know, the full run of European descendants, Irish, of course. So, you know, I have still not got a tongue to talk. Yeah. And I know when I hear you speak with such powerful language in your, you know, spiritual journey, how so powerful. And it sits there all the time for me, you know, it's like it's in me. But that comment was a guide. Even though I still can't speak the language of my ancestors, I have found a way to express the language of my soul and the language of my people and walk it, even though I can't speak it. And that has been the unfolding, you know. And so I remember after that being said to me, I was like, well, I started to track. This is when I started to track, and this is what I really want to share with people, is when you've got nothing to start with, and someone says, know your tongue, you know, where do I feel resonance? What's calling me? You know, what music, what colors, what that stuff, that beautiful stuff that feeds the soul, that sort of makes you tingle or makes you kind of go to it and draws you in. That's the stuff to start tracking, you know. And many, many things, you know, there was little signs along the way, always the ocean, this fetish for herring fish, you know, types of music, you know, and we had no concept of our family tree all this time, other than, you know, the nuclear family and a few random descendants type thing from Brisbane. So there was no one actually said we're from here, blah blah blah, you know. So I was literally tracking these things through my lived experience, and you know, and one of the things that always kept coming all the way through was eagle. And once I kind of, accepted, yep, that's a solid thing in my journey, that it started to get reflected back to me. And I had to look to Native American culture to understand eagle and, the power it has for those people and their culture, and get a sense of it. And I just allowed myself to work with that within myself. I didn't go and look for teachers or anything. I just, I mainly just read and research and feel into it and, respond to signs and things. But that definitely became like the North Star all the way through. And in the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, it's just so potent. Well, actually, since I turned 40 on my 40th birthday, was the big pumbaa. And, something really profound happened to me on the morning of waking up into my 40th birthday, that without a shadow of a doubt made everything, solidify for me around that. And the eagle and the weather and all of these things. And so since then, I've just, I would say had this leveling up hardcore initiation experiences coming at me that you need to come through. You need to bring this through. And and I would say I could describe that now using, other language or other concepts from other cultures, of the idea of a totem, that I very, very, very clear that's my totem.
Yep.
And I can own it,
Yes.
I can walk and own that. And now I've been understanding the relationship between the eagle and the thunder beings, and the eagle and the weather making and all of this, and how, the languages of it and the realms, and just surrendering to, I remember just going, I know nothing. I don't know how to do this. I can sense what you're asking me, but I don't know how to do it. Bring it on. And especially in the last year, that's been so full on. So and it's my old people. It's my old people emerging out of my bones. And, one story I will share is one summer way back, say around Bentley time, I think, so 2014, way back, that's so long ago. I had these frozen hips for the whole summer, like 10 weeks. I would literally wake up in the morning stiff and I couldn't move. I was like an old lady. And it was just excruciating. Like if I tried to move, it would feel like cracking bones. And it wasn't muscular, and it wasn't, it just wasn't physical. It didn't feel like a physical thing that I could nail to anything. And after these very long weeks of being with it, I said, what's the feeling of it? When I identified it and I really felt into it, it was like when you crack ice out of a tray.
Yes.
And you go like that.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got that, as soon as I named the ice, this huge eruption happened, like from literally my hips all the way up through, because I named the ice, and it was my ancestors, and this was my Norse ancestors trying to crack out of my bones, basically. And when I named it, and it was basically an indication that I was ready, I literally had one of my ancestors come up through my body and come in and sit up behind my eyes, like we're looking at each other now, and just pour so much love and acknowledgement, and said, you made it. You did it. You cracked it. Yeah. So that's a guide that I call my ancestral grandfather, who's so powerful, like ice and snow and hairy man, like stuff. Like just really, really, really old, like
I want to meet him.
Thousands of years ago.
Wow.
Just here, I think that's why people think I'm scary sometimes. But, I try and keep it at bay. Anyway,
Don't keep it at bay, babe. The world needs this power more than ever. The world needs this power. And you just naming that, it was my old people emerging through my body. I want to inspire everyone listening to reach for that experience. If you haven't yet had that experience, know that is your birthright. It is natural to us to feel our ancestors and our old people emerge through our existence in the present time. And anything less than that is a lie. Anything less than that is, what was the other word? I don't know. We
Spell.
Yeah, spell, absolutely. And we are so swiftly as a humanity walking back to, all sorts of things, remembering, returning, reclaiming, regenerating. But this, you really have keys for us here. I wonder, Billa, like you said, a lot of people out there have no clue around their ancestors or their family tree even. Like, it was never shared with them. They still don't have any. And a lot of these people who are keen to seek this are living in cities, potentially in apartment blocks, like locked in. What would you advise can be done from that time and place in terms of opening up to these communications and this guidance from our ancestors?
Yeah, for sure. So this stuff transcends time, transcends walls.
Yes.
It is transcendent, meaning it's like love. It travels across whatever, right? So you only have to be willing to start with. But there's blocks. It's like if you think about you're going to tunnel down through layers, down, not up, down, you're going to hit levels of blockage because of ancestral trauma and historical crap and colonizing everything, blah, 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 right? And one of the main things is for you to access your old people is the Christianity dominates our planet. It is the most populous faith, and it is completely tied in with geopolitical control.
Yes.
For the last 2,000 years.
Agreed.
So we all have a story with that if we live in a Western country. Yeah. Can't avoid it. The key thing about the Christian teachings when they interface with traditional people is to demonize your ancestors. Yeah. And how that happens is to call all of what you're doing, all your ceremonies, all your language, all your culture is heathen. It's the work of the devil. It's dark, it's bad, it's black, it's demonic. Yeah. So if that story's there and it hasn't been checked or hasn't been rustled up and weeded out yet, you can hit it and it's like freaking scary. Yeah, right?
Yep.
So it's just real. There's a real fear there because there could be hundreds of years of oppression of culture in your bones that your ancestors have experienced. So the first one is to just consciously know that was a ploy to disconnect people from their power, the power of their language, the power of their culture, the power of the teachings of their old people passed on through language and culture. Was demonized across the board for the sake of control, for the sake of political control. Religion was just a tool, but it was for control.
Yes.
So the first thing is to just go, hang on, they're my old people. They're my flesh and blood that I've arrived from, like the mushroom that emerges from the soil. I'm the fruit of that mountain of ancestors and they love me. They're my people. So as soon as I consciously say, okay, somebody somewhere demonized my ancestors, my culture, my power, my connection to the land, and I'm willing to make that connection again, I'm going to be the one to change the tide, then they will show up. And they will show up because they're in your bones. So, but it's really important to kind of undo like the power of human consciousness of the decision, the conscious awareness to say, all right, I know that that's true, and people can research this if they want. Just go and Google Anglo-Saxon history, for example.
Yes.
Right? Get a grasp on this thing of us being English speaking and apparently of English descent, blah, blah, blah. You know, just wrap heads around the process of how Anglo-Saxon came to be a thing in the world, because it's kind of like a fiction, if you like. It's real, but it's just this thing that happened. It's not actually rooted in anything other than people massively migrating and taking land. It's not the guts. Yeah, it's not the source power. It's constructed power over.
That's it.
And that's where we all identify. If we've got white skin, oh, you're Anglo-Saxon. Yeah, it's just like this broad stroke label.
Yeah.
Like no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the decolonizing starts, I would say, with that thing to say, okay, I won't be participating in demonizing my ancestors anymore. I'm going to get open to talking to them. Yeah.
Yes.
And then the simplest thing I tell people is just when you go to bed at night and you return to, you know, I say to my daughter, all the magic happens when you sleep. Yeah. When you return to the magic, when you switch off from this crazy world and just go to there, just ask a question. Whatever's alive for you, or just to connect with your own ancestors, just ask a question and see what happens in the night. You'll either dream something really profound, or when you first wake up in the morning, some very strong phrase or symbol or picture or something will be there, and it'll begin. And that's all you have to do is just ask, because it's in your bones. Fancy that.
Fancy that. And, you know, what I felt teary a moment back because you talked about, you know, right, we've got to stop demonizing, you know, our ancestors as per, you know, the religio spiritual control program that was put in. And when you just said, you know, the Anglo-Saxon sort of another blanket of control that was constructed and implanted, that doesn't have depth, roots, truth, and that we all identify with. It's now the demonizing, I feel, goes both ways. So the disconnection from ancestors, but now the demonizing of self that can go on, not everywhere, but that can go on around having white skin or partly white skin. And, oh, well, then we must all be evil, do you know? And I don't have the right to connect with my ancestors because of another program of control that is coming through more recent years that tries to tell us that, you know, and I know you've walked a little bit of a journey with this as we've talked about it, and I'd love you to share anything in here, because what I love about you, Billa, is that you hold a very strong line for us to be responsible, but then you're also holding a line for us to reclaim our rights as being Indigenous to Earth. And so when you were talking about, you know, our ancestors, I was feeling straight into my Mongolian ancestors, the Kazakh, the Eagle, and the Alta Mountains. And I recognized in that moment that there is a very subtle program that tells me I have no right because my skin is white. And I just want to expose that bullshit here right now as well, because if I'm feeling it, I'm sure a lot of other people are feeling that. And that is another potentially even more subtle program, but even more powerful. Like the subtler they get, the more powerful they are. And I just want to blow that one out of the water. That I've been so expanded speaking to you over the years around that. how you know in your bones that we're all from here. We're all from here, and because of the shit show that has gone on, there's so much collective guilt and shame that has us whip ourselves. And, there's responsibility to be taken and change to be made, of course. But there's something in there that still wants to disempower us and separate us from our ancestors. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Every now and then I have this funny thing that comes out. I go, well, babe, I'm pretty sure you're not one of the elite. You're not living in the $1 billion house, right?
Yeah. Just
one of us. So I'm not really worried about you being one of them. Yeah. So that means we're all in the shit show together. Yeah. And we, as an example, so, if you were one of the elite, I would be having a different conversation with you, but you're not. Yes. Okay. And that is the thing that people need to get their heads around and bust this conspiracy bullshit. Just do some research and understand the history of colonization, at least since the Romans.
Yes.
And that this structure, this Western structure we live in is a pyramid scheme. It is a hierarchy. There is a small group of people at the top dictating the life and way of everyone else, and it is based on stealing land, exploiting resources, and enslaving people. That is its model.
Boom.
There is no doubt about it. Again, look up the Anglo-Saxon history since the 5th century, and understand that, sentences like the elite declared themselves kings and set up burghs or burgs of land areas and said, henceforth I am the lord here. Yeah. You shall pay me rent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
It's all there. It's the structure of society. I was researching something this morning and I came across this word hundreds, right? And it's like hundreds meaning a county division. So this is a key thing, because remind me to come back to bio-regional design.
Okay.
So when you have an overlord coming in, a conqueror, a colonizer energy coming in, they don't care about the lay of the land anymore, or the pagan ceremonies and the keeper of the wells and the mythic stories of since the beginning of time. Like they just come in and they grid it up, and that's what 100 is. It's literally a grid. New South Wales has hundreds. Northern Territory has hundreds still today. Where literally you can go online and see the grid of land divvied up for the purpose of exploiting resources, running cattle, whatever it is, right? That's what goes on. So when you look at the history, the mass of people, as in the common people who aren't the ones deciding to divvy all that up and be the lords and receive the rent, are subjects and subject to that story, that history, and that's all of us. And if you have Irish ancestry, you have exactly the same story as Indigenous people in Australia, without a doubt. So Ireland was colonized by decree by a very small group of elite wealthy businessmen from England and taken out. The forests were destroyed, so the native people had no way to sustain themselves, lost their land connection, and it was just divvied up. And so when the New World, so let's go a few hundred years down the track, and the New World starts happening, because the same kind of groups of elite wealthy merchant businessmen with their ships want to go out and exploit India's resources in the Caribbean, and then that beast starts meeting with Indigenous people of colour everywhere. Africa, Caribbean, Australia, wherever they went, they met people of colour. This is when the race stuff starts. Because there is absolute death, destruction, exploitation, stealing and murder going on. So of course there's going to be animosity. It's there in the story. But are you someone pulling the trigger, or someone getting chucked on the convict ship because you stole a loaf of bread to try and feed your family, and then got shipped off as a slave to this new colony. Like,
yes.
It's all there in the story.
Yes.
It's just people need to really be brave to claim their story. And how did their ancestors get here? So my partner has a documented convict story, in 2 bloodlines.
Yep.
People that probably jumped on ships on purpose because it was a better deal to come here than back at home, with what was going on over there with all the lordship stuff, right?
Yes.
So it's that inquiry within, being brave enough to get past this stuff, and it can be an easy route out. Like, if I go and be friends with some black fellas, and get into their culture and sit around the fire, without doing that work, without going, this is who I am. And if you hang out with, my best friends are Indigenous people. My husband's a Papuan man, right? So they always say to you, "Where you from? Where you from, bro?"
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's all. Like, that's the greeting almost.
Yes.
And it's like, can we answer it? Can we say where we're from? That's the thing. If we can say where we're from, we're not part of that race story anymore. We're just a person or a human in the same long story of colonization. And are we claiming our power so that we're not perpetuating the same stuff? We're not then suffering Stockholm syndrome and doing the work of our oppressor.
Right on.
But we can't do that if we don't claim our own story. You only have to turn, 90 degrees that way and look back and be brave to look there, instead of, a lot of people disconnect from their own parents because it's a revolt, it's a rebellion against that way, that thinking, that especially if they're baby boomer parents, and they've been the most selfish generation of history. Like, it's really easy to go, I'm turning my back on that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to find my spirituality elsewhere. I'm going to pull this one in and that one in, but you've got to turn around. You've got to be the brave one to go back through that, get past your parents, past your grandparents, figure out how you got to Australia in the first place, if that's where you're listening from, and do the work. Figure it out by, you can do it by logistical tracking through family trees. And I spent 2.5 years tracking my family through research, but also, as I was saying before, just asking. Just asking, because claiming that story of who you are and that you are a European descendant from a migrating line to this country is where your power is.
Right on. And is that what you mean when you say that you have met your makers?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a very strange experience once, when right after that hip cracking thing happened, right? It's like I was open and the communication lines were open for the first time for real, like where I actually felt my ancestor within me. What happened next was I actually manifested a physical person who represented that being, almost speaking through this other person. And when she spoke to me, I literally fell back on the earth, laughing and crying at the same time, with this feeling of arriving somewhere, of flowering almost, of getting let loose out of a whole bunch of crap, almost like a starburst, just and I fell back and I laughed and I cried, and I met my maker. My makers found a way to speak to me from a physical person and basically echo the love and the message through someone who was willing to be a channel at that moment, and that was an Indigenous elder. And that was amazing, and I had a relationship with her for a couple of years, and it was very, very powerful. And she, from her roots and her wisdom base and her outlook on the world, that was profoundly different to anyone I have met in real life. Very, very, very old timelines, if that makes sense, like wisdom that comes from epochs ago.
Yep.
She said things to me. She told me things about me that distilled or made sense of all of these other things that I had been experiencing. And I've only really had that happen once, where somebody that wise came into my life and was able to kind of translate what was happening in here. But it's happened in small ways too. It's happened, and it's always from, it's so often from, especially here, and it's so often from Indigenous folks that I get that reflection.
And you have a particularly strong connection with the Indigenous here. Do you think that is not intentional, but I'm sure you would have great connection with any tribe that you came across, but do you think that there is like special and specific keys for you lying in the culture here?
I probably flip it the other way. There's things that I have that are really, really needed here. And so if I'm not walking around in my, privileged illusion of, I'm a sixth generation white Australian, doing private school and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
But I'm actually like, fully awake, descendant of my people, birthed here and going, okay, what's going on here? Why am I here? What are we doing? And I'm still plugged into like this, devotion to the mother, devotion to care for the landscape, devotion to all those earth-centered things. Then I'm looking around going, okay, where am I?
Yes.
What's going on? And I think people sense that of me. That's my experience. Like cultural people kind of, sense that and want to have a conversation. And what I've learned is that in my line, I have very, very deep connection to pine trees, to the whole pinus family of trees. So the whole east coast of Australia is almost denuded of its pine trees since colonization. Right. People don't realize how many pine trees are missing in the landscape. And so, through my journey with permaculture and regenerative agriculture and, food forestry and all of these realms that I work in, same like this eagle, I've had this constant singing to me from pine trees, always since I was little, but more and more and more. And, to the point where I just I see them and I just want to go and live underneath them. I just kind of burn for them,
Yes.
And then, okay, if I reclaim, what I've learned is our earthly responsibility as, people who are, Indigenous to place. We often will have a plant and an animal that we are responsible to and for, to act as custodians, to remember their essence, to sing their songs, to caretake them, to build them up when their numbers are down, all of these things. Right. And that's one of my jobs.
Yes.
Is to get those pine trees back in the ground. And so, I end up having conversations with people that barely anyone's got any awareness around this, that Australia would have failed as a colony if it wasn't for the red cedar trees, because the Europeans came here with their tools and met the eucalyptus trees and everything broke because the wood was so hard and they nearly packed up and went home. Might have been a good idea. But somebody found the red cedar trees, which isn't a pine tree, by the way, but they found the red cedar, and then the red gold rush happened all up the east coast of Australia, which anyone that lives on the east coast should know and understand that history is that literally, murder and stealing and everything that happens around gold happened around the red gold, which was the cedar trees. And they were huge trees in the landscape. And so, tracking all of that, I'm looking at two giant 5-year-old cedar trees in a suburban backyard here that we planted right now. So, it's this thing of how am I tending? How am I understanding where I am? How am I understanding the medicine of my lineage and how it wants to be expressed, like in a deeply earth connected way where I'm listening, you know, like I can listen to the landscape when I show up somewhere and go, okay, what does me tell me about this, which is all of my lineage there, you know? And sometimes it takes me years to make sense of, say, one thing that comes through, and I have to learn. I have to constantly learn, because I don't have a mentor or a teacher or, you know, that beautiful grandfather elder in my life, or grandmother elder sitting, raising me through this, which is how it should be. I have to just keep staying open to the fact that it's not going to come from the physical realm, that kind of teaching, you know, it's in my bones. I have to listen. I have to dream. I have to get people out of my face a lot of the time so I can have a lot of quiet time and have long, long sleeps, because if I don't get calm enough without interference, I can't hear them and they can't talk, and they get this backlog of, right, you're not doing your job, you know, because there's all this crap going on, and I get, you know, I get frustrated and pent up, and people around me like, what's going on? And I can't explain it exactly, you know, to everyone, but it's like, I need space to listen. So so there's a lot going on all the time, but I think, you know, that's where my vision comes from. That's where having this kind of clarity about what we need to do has been there for so long, because it's, you know, it's this understanding over time that we're missing an Amazon-sized forest down the east coast of Australia. I mean, we're lucky we still have a fair bit of forest compared to lots of places, but we've already lost the Amazon, you know. So when we get these crowd funds and save the forest stuff on the internet, this is that thing, like modern people, we should do something about that, you know. I'll send money, or I'll you know, show up in some way, but without knowing right where we are. What the hell's going on here, you know? And then how do I bring myself through, and myself being all of self, all my ancestors and me as the representative, to this place where I am. And then there's no guilt. There's just power. Like contribution and power.
Totally. Absolutely. And that's something that that you carry with you in bucket loads, is that energy of contribution, like where I just feel like you're constantly contributing, Billa, like you're constantly on mission, helping, fixing, solving, trying. Like but it just comes so naturally to you. You're a woman of great purpose and power, and I feel like because you have got your ancestors fully with you, and you've done this work, and you know who you are, and you know your history, and you're conscious of it, and that you've landed here and you're contributing here, it feels like you are more or less unfuckwithable.
Well, you know,
seriously.
Thanks, Chrissie. I mean, there is an aspect of truth there, but you know, my experience is that these histories and intergenerational traumas and spells and all the trick ups of privilege are just constant obstacles in my way. Like people, you know, there is, where I've found the most kind of green light is in the nature connection movement. The people who are most connected to nature and having a relationship with the mother are the most willing to get in and be custodians. And like let all the other stuff sort itself out in the wake of moving forward with what we are supposed to do, which is to tend the earth, to be fed by the earth and tend the earth in constant reciprocity, you know. But if I step outside of that field, that realm of nature connection, people, you know, wild schoolers and all that crew, then I'm literally stepping away from connection into another level of disconnection there. And then you've got to wade through what's there. What is it? You know, what's the agendas that have been inherited? What's the blockages? What's the privilege, there's so many layers of people's, basically are your excuses for not being a true human, you know?
yes.
And then you hear the like the Haudenosaunee, they refer to themselves as the real people. That's why, because if you're really true to being human, this is our purpose, to tend the earth that feeds us.
Right.
Is to take care in a very particular relational way. It's not just this blanket statement. So, you know, this comes towards the bi-original thing I was saying, remind me about. It's like, it's all good, save the children, save the earth, like, let us reclaim some morals here.
Yes.
But it is actually about deep relationship. And this is where the not perpetuating, you know, the colonization story and the white privilege story comes down to being very humble and saying, if I'm to have deep relationship with a place, it is very specific to that place.
Yes.
And in that place, there is a people. There is a people that have been there for time immemorial who have wisdom about that place. And there's particular things that belong in that place that have probably been removed or rearranged. And that's when we come into our power of, okay, we have unique insights and we have unique powers from our lineage, and we have gifts. We have these gifts of, they're powers, you know, they're literal powers of how to perceive reality or to know something or to feel something. Like humans are amazing.
Yes.
But when you're not in your homeland, which is all of us, right, and you're on a new land, you've got to be humble with those things and go, well, where am I? What's speaking back to me? How does this place need to be helped? And how can I help fix some of the destruction, which maybe my ancestors participated in since coming here and so forth, right? But it's getting into a very specific conversation. And, you know, you can do that by, this was the talk that we did at the Australian Permaculture Convergence a few weeks back, is like permaculture design starts with knowledge of place.
Yes.
So how do you start that journey of understanding where you are? And then you can be very specific in how you do permaculture or how you reforest the land. You know, we've seen the histories in the last, you know, 60 years of, you know, mining companies come in and then do this kind of restorative tree planting stuff back in like 1970 with these like parochial old fuddy-duddy companies, and they just chucked out like South African seeds and put all these weeds in the landscape. And then over time, you know, they get more sophisticated and understand the science from ecologists and so forth. And actually, we have to plant native seeds when we do that. Maybe we should be even more than plant native seeds. We should plant them in their right order or their right ratio and all these things. And, you know, you get into this, I am helping the earth recover so it can feed me, feed us, feed the generations coming. Not, you know, I just see the world as it is now as this wrecking ball, you know. It's just this colossal wrecking ball out of control, just destroying everything. And if we don't get into our powers and start saying, you know what, that is not what being human is about. It's not about all this bullshit. It is literally about the hand that feeds you is our mother. We're supposed to be free, and we're supposed to just, you know, engage with the mother, care for the mother, and in this beautiful reciprocal relationship. Not all this other crap. It's insane. Like, it is insane. I'm really inspired by, you know, the idea of, you know, connecting specifically with one plant and one animal, you know, and becoming a guardian of those beings, like where you live. Like, I think that is a beautiful way to deepen relationship and connection to place, and to begin, you know, to walk the journey of custodianship, you know, wherever we are. I think we can do that wherever we are, in whatever country, in whatever city or whatever suburb. We can tune in and, you know, like you said, are we willing? Like, if we aren't willing
to do that, if we're not willing to do that, go, right, who needs my help out there? If we're not willing to do that, what are we?
Yeah. And this goes back to the kind of destruction of pagan cultures that nourished and celebrated and lived into those relationships. They were literally cultural tending, earth tending relationships that got passed on in the stories, in the song. So when that kind of beastie destroyal of that, and let's have this monoculture spirituality and cities and overlord structures everywhere, then that's when we've lost the unique intimate relationships with place. And that's why you can go to any Western city anywhere in the world and it all looks the same.
Yes,
because it's not unique to there, and when you look at Indigenous peoples and their traditional dress is so unique. It's like as unique as all the birds of the earth. It's such an expression of the place.
Yes.
The dance, the timing of their dances, the way they sing embodies the place.
Yes.
That's why it's their culture.
Yes.
Yeah? And we have this huge imposition of monoculture across our lives. And if we don't say, well, hey, that's what's created this anthropocentric reality where everything revolves around me, which revolves around humans, which is rooted in the Lord. Everything revolves around the Lord who's taking the rent from everyone, right? So everything revolves around that individual. Well, what that has turned into over time, and we don't have this direct relationship with the Lord and his men coming around collecting the gold in their hide sacks on the back of their saddle anymore. But we still in the story, we still do that.
Yep.
And what that has bred is narcissism. Like inherent narcissism in modern people is one of the biggest obstacles, because it's all about us and not, hey, I'm sharing this land with not only the ancestral peoples and the spirit of the ancestral peoples that we're here, and all of the creatures, all of the people, other peoples, the tree people, the rock people, all of the peoples that are here, I share with them. So how do I show up as a human and not just take and take and take and make it all about me? How do I give back so that I'm looking over the gun? How do I give back so that more critters can live well?
Yeah.
How do I contribute to that little patch?
Yeah, that's it.
And then for me, I've found that me being committed to that has really nourished my relationships with custodians of place like my friend Mark here, who say to me, well, our people have forgotten how to feed ourselves from the land other than the sea, fishing from the sea, and that hasn't been broken. But we don't have plant knowledge anymore for here. So we have this beautiful relationship of rediscovering what can grow here and how can we feed ourselves from this sand island where I live. And like that, it's a live thing that we're doing and discovering together because it got broken. And it's a really beautiful, nourishing part of my life, and everyone could be helping with that wherever they are. Just
right
being
on.
willing. Yeah,
just being willing. And so this is what you talk about, your purpose is around repairing these human intergenerational biocultures. So
yes,
that's your mission, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So a beautiful way to kind of cut through a lot of, John Young calls it the wall of green. Like, it's just overwhelming. How do I even interact with that thing, that nature thing? It's like, so how I like to explain it is that, each place, looking at the sky now, each place has its weather, its climate. Yeah. And that's more of a meta pattern of a place. It's a bigger pattern playing out all the time. And the weather is actually what creates what lays down into the land and lays down this pattern of climate. And then where you see that land down into form is in the soil, and then the soil expresses outwardly that weather through plants, through birds. So it's this beautiful dance between the big metacycles of the Mother Earth's weather, which is like her metabolism and all her life-giving forces, and how that lays down in a certain place is what makes the place. With climate, word like climate, weather, subtropical, tropical. So the thing where am I? I'm in a subtropical sand island. That's where I am right now. So then how does that, how do those big subtropical patterns, which keep the big mother alive, the subtropical regions of the world, feed the rain systems of the world? Where all the rain draws up from the ocean, it's where you get these big, big blue skies here. And you see it all the way down to like where you are down there. Big blue skies over the ocean. And then, how does that lay down? And then you've got like really high growth here all the time. So everything grows fast compared to, say, Victoria. So you've got this pattern going on. So this is like vitality and a fast pace, fast growth. Not on the island, everything it doesn't translate socially. It's island time. Anyway, but it's like actually like getting in touch with those patterns, and the way sailors do, the way boat people do. They're just in tune with it. And then moon cycles, all those things, and then like how is that landing down in the soil where you are, understanding soil, having a play with learning about soil and what makes it healthy, or the type of soils that you live in and what the history of soils are, because then everything else brings back up and out from there. And we're in that dance. That's where we are the two-legged walking around in what's being expressed back up. So you've got weather, soil, and then all of the kind of moving parts that we live in. And even just talking about it's so refreshing, because it's like away from all that other distractive crap, and just like, this is life, this is the creation as it's happening. That's in a certain place where we dwell. Yes.
So much richness there, so much satisfaction, so much true life satisfaction from being deeply connected to the rhythms of nature, and not just connected, but to know ourselves a part of, to be in the ecosystem, to be part of, not dominant over the ecosystem. I mean, it's just gotten so fucking boring. I mean, it's so awful. It's so awful. And not just awful, destructive, murderous and everything other. It's actually fucking boring. Like the way that those systems of spiritual control have made us so incredibly immature and tedious, and it's the richness in nature.
Well, it's powerful. It's true power. It's the power of life force expressed. And that's what we should be participating in. And if we don't question these civilized structures that we find ourselves born into, and what are their roots, and what are their intentions and agendas, and how they got to be like this, in this wrecking ball reality, then we're missing where the real power is, and we're missing our purpose. And that's what, I feel the mother wants us to wake up from in a whole way. And then, it's not so much about save the earth then, because the earth she'll go through her rumble, and we've had these kind of civilizations before. They always end in tears. So it's not that. It's not that. It's actually living true now. Living true to be worthy parents of children, to say this is what life is. Life, literally life. Life force, as in growing things, and the things that are real. And I love the Ringing Cedars books. I probably told you that, but there's a great saying in there. Anastasia says, sometime in the future we will look back at this time and think how insane it was to kill living things to make all these dead things. straight up, right?
Yeah, straight
It's
up.
like animated death all around us, just things stuck and stored in time, you know, things that don't break down anymore, things that are just taken from the living earth, turned into something and stored in time, and wonder why depression is rampant. You know, and then you go out into nature and it's all alive, it's all humming, it's all singing.
Yes.
And there's the life force, because that's what life is actually about.
Yes.
You know, so I suppose that's my message, is just, you know, the life that lives within you, in your bones and stones, you know, it's where all memories laid down, even in a scientific way, like calcium lays down. It's like where information is laid down literally in layers and stored, and that's our bones. Same with rocks, it's where the old stories of the land are. And so, you know, it's in us. Our stories are in us. We have such incredible intelligence in us that manages to perpetuate itself in our species and all other species through these seeds of life that grow and have all this information to produce a whole human with all this complexity. And that's nature's intelligence. That's what intelligence is, you know. And just get rid of all this external authority crap, because they're all
bunch of wankers.
A bunch of wankers, right?
Bunch of wankers. And isn't it exciting? I mean, really, isn't it exciting what's happening on the planet at the moment? I mean, that system of control in society is fast crumbling. Do you know, like, it's just people are waking up so fast and just saying, I'm out. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not watching that anymore. I'm not banking with you anymore. I'm not buying that anymore. I'm not sending my kids to school anymore. I'm not, you know, like, it's very exciting. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's, you know, I suppose for me, being a proactive person on the kind of forerunning side, it's like, guys, we're leaving it all a little bit too late, because the desperate measures that they're taking now might limit your freedoms faster than you would like.
That's right.
You know, so hurry up already.
But it's, you know, we have this opportunity on our hands that, you know, people are needing this guidance, you know, like the guidance that you have shared today. People are really needing it. I know a lot of people who are like literally waking up to the new reality, or the ancient reality, but a new reality for them that is, you know, the mother culture. The culture of Mother Earth and nature, and they're waking up to it really fast. And, you know, like, shit, where do I go now? And so,
I'd say go within. Yeah.
Go within, yes. Yeah, what guidance? I mean, what top 3 tips would you give to people who are fresh in their journey with reconnecting to life?
Yeah. Barefoot is really, really important. We're electromagnetic beings, and if we're constantly disconnected from the earth, always something between us, rubber soles, whatever, flaws, we're actually not nourishing our own natural flows, electromagnetic flows, and so we feel off kilter all the time. It's harder to drop in. So that's, you know, at least every day getting out on the grass and the earth, or walking with barefoot if you can. Don't wear shoes at all. That was fundamental for me for many years. It was like, you know, religious practice, barefooting all around the world. So that, sleep on the earth if you can, sleep on the earth and under the stars. Get that stuff that's between you and the heavens gone, you know, at night as often as you can, and have that transmission and energetic flow moving this way, because there's your ancestors up there. And my daughter, we call them the boo-boos, all the boo-boos up there, you know, since she was little. So that's, you know, there's communication that can happen that way. And then, like I said, in your bones, ask at nighttime before you go to sleep, you know, for guidance, for communication, for whatever. Just start with something simple. And then as the story starts unfolding and you get to track things, ask more questions. And then you have this alive communication going on, yeah? And, a story is coming to mind. There was a occupation from the, like, up in the Five Nations area. The Haudenosaunee up in east of North America, and it was kind of like a Bentley. It was a blockade from a developer coming in on these sacred lands, and all of the camp and the campaigning and all that going on. I think they even blocked a highway at some point, and it was a serious thing that was on world news and everything. And of course, the powers that be betrayed the trust that was there, and of saying, we'll never come in the middle of the night and raid your camp and put old people and children at risk or anything, but they did. I might not have this story 100% correct, but the gist of it was the trust was broken again, just like they did with all the parent land treaties in the beginning. So the trust was broken, and there was this frontline battle going on. There was a big line of riot police, and then there was all the Haudenosaunee people protecting their land, and they were like a war front. And it was dangerous. People could die at that point if somebody fired a shot or whatever. And then this phenomena happened, and all the police just started retreating back. They were just pulling out. They're just going back and back and back, and people on the other side, they didn't quite know what was going on. But as it turned out, and one of those policemen had to went on immediate sick leave and resigned from his job. So he was the one that ended up telling what happened, was that what they could see behind the living people was hundreds and hundreds of ancestors on horseback behind them and supporting them. And I just got goosebumps all over. And this is what's there for us when we open the gates. And this is what we need. We need help. We do need help. We need to reconnect with all of these things and call for help and guidance. Because this is big. This is big what's going on right now. Yeah? And these are the things we have to remember. Our ancestors love us.
Yes.
And our ancestors back far enough have deep, deep connection with an origin place that is our root into the earth. We all have that, without a doubt. Unless you're an alien. If you're an alien and you're listening, please go home.
Yeah. Unless you're a good one. Unless you're here to help. If you're a bad one, piss off. Your time's up.
So, yeah, like strengths. I would say tuning into that gives you strengths, and it's the inner strength that we need right now. We need inner strength, and we're not going to get all the answers, and this is unknown territory we're in now. This is the result of many, many hundreds of years of crap. Like, it's so bad and so out of control. But the strengths from reconnecting with our people in our bones and reconnecting with the mother that loves us, that's where the strength comes from. That's there for everybody. Because I know a lot of people are having a hard time right now trying to cope with what's going on. Yeah. So I would say it's strengthening, if nothing else. Fortifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Absolutely. 100%. Words of wisdom. Darling Billa, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
On Instagram, it's Mama Whitey-Girl. And I have a website called thepacificvillage.com, which is a little bit dormant right now, but if people are keen to hear from me, I'm happy to be more active on there. But I do post on Instagram pretty regularly, so it's easy for me there. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll publish those links under this this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing with us today and coming into the kitchen sharing your wisdom and your love. And I just know that so much of what you've shared will touch a lot of people, and that has a huge ripple effect. So thank you so much for your time today, darling.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, I hope it sort of plants some seeds or grows something for people, you know. It's there for all of us. So. And thank you for everything you do for the earth and all of us. You're a gem.
Thank you.
In the universe.
Thank you so much. Lots of love. Bye for
now.
All
right, you too. All right, love.
Bye.
Bye. See you.